Hello and welcome to the Copper Compendium. I'm Daniel and today we're diving into D&D and what is, in my opinion, one of the most criminally underrepresented monster types in the game, constructs. More specifically, Clockworks. I count only 10 current, officially published monsters with Clockwork in the name, and if we're feeling much more generous in our definition, only 43 constructs which you might count, many of which are functionally the same. In comparison to dragons, of which there are 42 that are adult or ancient alone, the selection for constructs seems sparse. So if you're like me and have an artificer villain for a campaign you're running, or just need some more interesting constructs to spice up your next combat, perhaps a new Tomb Guardian instead of a classic golem, you've come to the right place. Now, it goes without saying that if any of my players from my campaigns are watching this, now is your warning to stop. Everyone else, let's dive into the new constructs. Now, I'm a sucker for world building. When I'm making new mechanics, or, as in this case, creatures, I like to make sure they fit into my world. In this case, my aim was also to make sure they'll fit into your world, too. As such, the 12 I designed were built to fit specific roles, both in combat and society. How widespread these constructs are is, of course, up to you, with at least a few of them providing a helpful springboard for your own world building. Or maybe not. If you just want to drop them in for one combat or encounter and be done with it, go for it. Right, enough waffling. Let's get into the meat of the video. I present Clockworks. As I mentioned, I've created 12 constructs, of which 2 are available for free through the first link in the video description. If you like what you see there, the other 10 are available for a few dollars, pounds, pick your currency through the second link, which will take you to my itch.io page. The 2 you can grab for free are the Clockwork Dervish and the Lifeline. Coming in at CR 4 and 1 respectively, these should be easy to drop in at most tiers of play. Those included in the extra supplement range from CR 0 all the way to CR 11, meaning in most of the lower tiers of play there will be plenty to challenge players with. So, what are these constructs and how do you use them in the campaign? Let's start with the simple but potent construct, the Lifeline. An adventurer struggles free from the grips of a remote dungeon, bleeding profusely. A temple would be too far away and their healer fell inside the dungeon. Thankfully, they prepared ahead of time. Waiting outside is an odd mechanical construct, already covering the distance to the wounded hero. As the Lifeline heals their wounds, the sole survivor of the dungeon lets out a sigh of relief and begins to count out their meagre loot. Such is the power of the Lifeline. Designed to travel to places where healing is inaccessible or dangerous for conventional healers, lifelines are often the first on the scene in disaster zones, providing healing and comfort for the wounded. In my world, lifelines were first created by dwarves deep below the earth, having grown distrustful of gods and their servants. Their tinkerers found ways to convert the stored power of potions into tangible healing, and thus the Lifeline was born. Brought to cave-ins and plague outbreaks alike, their immunity to disease and capacity to lie dormant until needed makes them incredibly valuable assets to those they serve. While designed to heal, lifelines are quite capable of inflicting damage when threatened. In the case of our dwarves, deep in the bowels of the earth, a cave-in might mean a monster attack, and all hands responding need to be able to fight. When a lifeline heals a creature, it retains a memory of their pain and can inflict it on others when it needs to defend itself. Typically, however, lifelines are programmed to be peaceful and compliant medics to those in need. Not all who use lifelines have such noble goals, and lifelines have been used in many skirmishes since their inception. Most warmongers don't have gods or their servants on side, so many turn to lifelines as an alternative. More intensive to maintain than clerics, lifelines nonetheless have the advantage of not questioning orders, remaining loyal regardless of the actions of their creator. As we've reached that stage, I guess that makes it time to jump into how to use lifelines against your players. As a low CR creature with limited combat capabilities, lifelines are never meant to be the frontline force of a battle. Instead, with their multiple methods of healing, they are ideal supports for tankier allies. With an AC of 15 and only 25 hit points, lifelines are relatively comparable to zombies in survivability, and they have a simple damaging attack that deals a modest amount of necrotic damage. However, lifelines aren't designed for damage. The main stars of the Lifeline's stat block are its aura and its spells. The Lifeline has several spells it can call upon to aid its allies, both at will and limited. Healing Word 3 times a day can give a distant ally a boost and keep them on their feet another round, while Cure Wounds as frequently can give a bigger boost at the cost of entering the fray. Meanwhile, Guidance gives a nice boost to ability checks, while Spare the Dying allows it to stabilise a creature until it can be properly treated. Its aura is the trump card, however. So long as it is powered by potions, which I'll come to in a bit, the Lifeline emits an aura that regens 2d4 hit points to allied creatures within 20 feet at the start of the creature's turn, up to half their total hit points. For a low-level combat, a Lifeline-supported ogre would be a terrifying foe, soaking hits and then restoring the damage until the party can kill the Lifeline. For a higher-level combat, a demon or a troll supported by Lifelines would be an even more terrifying prospect. In general, Lifelines will want to hang out at the back of a combat, using their allies with more health to shield themselves from the brunt of the attacks, preferably using Healing Word to support those further away, Cure Wounds on those close, and trying to keep as many allies in their aura as possible. If out of spells, their tactics would probably change to the dodge action, using their aura to sustain when they no longer can. The last point to note here is not so much combat as general mechanics. As mentioned earlier, these constructs are designed to be powered by potions. Without potions to power them, Lifelines enter a kind of stasis, shutting down all functions and awaiting new fuel. I've included rules in the document for how long a potion will power a Lifeline, based on potion rarity. If you'd prefer to ignore the mechanic, by all means do so. It's included mostly so that, should you want to, you can give your players a Lifeline without it completely breaking your game. Now, onto the fun bit. How exactly do you drop it into a campaign? The obvious way of using a Lifeline is as support for a major encounter, supporting a more powerful creature with healing. However, if you wanted to, it would be relatively simple, and I've included rules, to provide a Lifeline to your players, perhaps if they have no party member with consistent healing. Lifelines are expensive, costing 2,500 gold pieces to buy outright if you choose to have such technology widely available in your world, but a more interesting approach would be for players to find the remains of one, perhaps delving into the tomb of a technologically advanced civilization or infiltrating an engineer's lab. A Lifeline only partially working isn't an immediate power spike, and gives players something to spend their gold on or work towards between sessions. I can also see a Lifeline NPC being an interesting approach. While they may be primarily healers, they have the same intelligence as a commoner and likely have distinct personalities. A rogue Lifeline medic at a hub location for the party could fruit some interesting roleplay, and would also give some variety from the classic go to the local temple to get healed approach. Of course, it would also be very easy to introduce Lifelines in an area devastated by plague or a major disaster zone as a sort of first boots on the ground measure by the authorities responding. If the players themselves got caught up in the disaster, they may find themselves being treated by one, or helping get the injured to a field hospital staffed by Lifelines. However, these are just a few of my ideas. I'd love to hear what you come up with down in the comments. And now, on to the second, the Clockwork Dervish. A dwarf looks up, horrified, as a maelstrom of blades lands among his company, hurled from a distant catapult. From a safe distance, the gnome artificer laughs as his creation goes to work. If a Lifeline is a helping hand in a time of need, a Clockwork Dervish is whirling pain and death on the battlefield. Clockwork Dervishes are designed as anti-infantry weapons, shredding through close-range opponents with speed and efficiency, then rapidly running down those that attempt to flee. In my world, they were first designed by the gnomes, but any race that prioritises attacking from safety, as well as those fond of tinkering or traps, might employ dervishes. Dervishes are so called because they spin like deadly bladed spinning tops as they move, a constant storm of slashes that radiates out from a central, almost balletic humanoid frame. This barrier of blades makes them difficult to hit directly, as well as harming those that get close, or that the dervish gets close to. Their method of combat is unusual. Simply by being in close proximity to opponents, dervishes can dish out considerable amounts of damage and aren't limited by being able to perform a certain number of attacks each round. However, this is bleeding much more into combat, so let's jump into a deeper dive on the strategy and kit of running a dervish. The first thing you'll notice on the dervish's stat block is the lack of attacks. Instead, whenever a dervish's blades overlap a creature, the creature takes damage. Over time, the dervish can increase this damage as an action by reducing its speed, or increase its speed in a similar manner. In addition, as the speed of the dervish increases, it becomes harder to hit as the blades spinning around it block attacks. It can also dash as a bonus action every few rounds, allowing it to deal a little more damage, and it is difficult to grapple and knock prone. Lastly, it has a variant of the rogue's uncanny dodge, allowing it to gain some speed while resisting a hit. combat, a Dervish should be always mobile, taking opportunity attacks almost constantly as it spins between combatants, triggering its damage each time its blades hit a creature. The first few rounds will typically see it increasing its speed as much as possible, then reducing it in later rounds to increase its damage per hit. Dervishes will work incredibly effectively against grouped up parties, though it shouldn't take long for them to realise this and spread out to counteract its advantage. I think that covers its combat utility, so how do you put one in a campaign? Designed as they are for use on battlefields, the obvious place to throw dervishes into a campaign is in the midst of a pitched battle, or when the player characters are besieging a castle. If you have kobolds as a planned enemy, it is entirely possible that they would have a couple of them as a pseudo-trap, even, ready to unleash on unsuspecting adventurers. Another option is in an arena fight, as I myself have run them. With their unique method of dealing damage, they work perfectly as a challenge set by someone the characters might want to impress, or need something from. My final suggestion is to use them as a deterrent. Given time, dervishes can get up to considerable speed and deal considerable damage, though in a straight combat, most characters will never see their full potential. If an enemy is guarding a route the characters must traverse with a squadron of dervishes, particularly if they have a way to keep them fully spun up and at maximum speed, that could present a major obstacle to the party and perhaps even force a negotiation. And if the party decide to try their luck, they may be in for a rude awakening. So there we have it. 2 new Clockworks to add to your games, completely free. I look forward to hearing the stories of how you make use of these, and don't forget to check out the expansion for 10 more creatures like these, if you enjoy my work. As ever, the normal YouTube stuff applies, so if you like what I do here, give the video a like and share this with your friends. Until the next one.